available. Anyone needing assistance can go to the handrails located to my left near the front, and there will be university staff available to assist and provide support during and after the vigil. There is also ongoing help and support available to you as students through the Counseling and Mental Health Center and via the Dean of Students Office Behavioral Care Support Program. Reach out if you are struggling or know of someone who is. Help is available. There will be 4 speakers tonight who will share their happy memories of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. After each speaker, there will be a moment of silence to reflect on the good these 4 individuals brought into the world. Candles are available at various tables around the lab and lawn. There is a limited supply, and if you find you don't have a candle, that is okay. You can use your phone light to participate. At this time, we'll begin lighting candles. Please be courteous to those around you and share your candle light with others.
All right, you see there's going to be 4 speakers coming up, and now they are distributing those candles. We'll be watching this throughout the hour, and we'll go back in when we hear the speakers that talk specifically about the victims. Let's bring in Al Wunsch III, Erica Wilson, and Darnell Crosland. They are all here with us. It's a live tank. Boy, Vinny wishes he were here, sitting on this couch. This might be television history with Darnell and Al in the same room. Eric in charge of keeping them apart. I don't think anybody's going to fight about this one. It's just heartbreaking, and you see the people gathering there. We talked to Steve Gonzalez, the Gonzalez family attorney, earlier. They don't want to call it an anniversary because these families are just being tortured. It's taking so long. Al, there's no trial date. Yes, it's a quad murder with death case, but that's a bit odd. Is it at least throw out a possible trial date to give people something to hold on to?
Well, you don't want to get people's hopes up for something and then have it delayed. I think that's worse. I think the anticipation of a date certain gives these people the idea that this is going to be done. And as we all know, trials are not that way. I mean, everything gets adjourned. There's always a good reason, and then there's always a reason the judge will give it, an adjournment. So you give these people a cold, hard date, they're all set, ready to go, doing everything they need to do, and then it's adjourned. That up and down is probably worse.
Erica, why are we so fascinated by this case? Is it the victims or the crime and the horror that people just can't get their head around?
It's both, right? Like my daughter turns 18 on Thursday, right? So she's going to college, and for all the parents who have children, right, to think that you send your child to college in a small town in Idaho, no less, you think that you're sending them to a safe place. So for this to happen to not only 1 student, but 4 students is something that is literally unthinkable. And so everybody, the nation is kind of gripped by this because it's like, we want to make sure, how did this happen? What were the signs? How could we all do better to make sure it doesn't happen? And then you have that, juxtapose that, and then you have Bryan Kohberger. And this guy is clearly one of the most narcissistic sociopaths. He thinks he's smarter than everybody in the room, and he's playing all these legal maneuvering games. And so we're kind of fascinated by him as well. For whatever reason, this country is always fascinated with the murderers and the serial killers and that sort of thing. And so we have that juxtaposition of he's kind of titillizing and tantalizing, and then you have the tragedy of these 4 innocent students who were literally just going off to educate themselves. And so we really want to figure out, because we still don't know. We think we know the who, we know the what, we don't know the why.
Right, and we may never, Darnell, because unless he or whoever did this, he's just accused, tells everybody why, it could be, he could be, we'll never know, right? But do you think at the end of the day there was a connection? We had his phone, according to that affidavit, in the area 12 times, 5 months prior during that period. Do you think whoever did this was targeting and there was a connection?
Absolutely. These are definitely crimes of opportunity. When the kids are on college campuses, people seem to know their comings, their goings, and for whatever reason, they're watching these kids, whether it's economic opportunity or some sexual fantasy or mental breakdown that somebody's having, these kids are like sitting ducks. And as Erica just said, you send your kids to school, they're in one specific space, and they can just get picked off. And that's what's kind of disheartening. And the fact that Kohlberger, somebody who we would least expect, I think is astonishing.
Yeah, and they did nothing wrong. And Steve Gonzalez was talked, and he has racked his head. What could I have told Kaylee to do differently? Nothing. They went out. They had the buddy system. They took a professional driver home to a very short area. They did everything right. They were literally in their beds when this took place. Al, the most compelling evidence at this point from this probable cause affidavit is the DNA on that knife sheath. Let's say you're defending this individual. Not saying you would, but if you were, how do you get around that?
Well, I mean, that's a tough call. That's going to be the hardest thing in this entire case, and it's going to fall on that. The interesting thing is that if that is the best thing that they have, that one little aspect of DNA, maybe the rest of the case isn't as strong. And that's where things get a little dicey. You mentioned about why. Okay, well, prosecution doesn't have to prove motive, and that's never a situation, but that's something that everyone wants to know. And that may be the thing that Kohlberger may be able to use for his advantage at some point to say, put their minds at ease, let me tell you why this happened, and work out a plea arrangement that way.
In terms of DNA, there's definitely going to be a transfer argument because the professor's on the campus, the kids are on the campus, and DNA transfer is a huge area of criminal law that we talk about. I could touch this chair, you could touch it, and my DNA could be somewhere where you went later.
Right, you're never in that room or touch that item. Let's do this. Let's go back to that vigil because there is a new speaker now talking specifically about one of the victims. Let's listen.
And seeing all the lives that they touched brings me as much joy as it does sadness. When reaching out to friends, there were many kind words that were used to describe Maddie. The most common being kind, loving, genuine, driven, stunning, outgoing. This list can go on forever, but most of all, bright. Maddie was a bright person. She had a bright smile. She had a bright future. Maddie was bright. She was bright in every way that a person could be. Maddie was the kind of person who made sure everyone felt welcomed and cared for. It was nearly impossible to not be smiling when you were around her. She made every person that she interacted with feel loved. A memory of her from a friend was the first time I met Maddie, she pulled me aside and asked if I wanted to go do something together the next day. From another friend. All the memories I have of Maddie consist of everything good. She always had a smile on her face. She truly made any room she walked into a brighter place. No matter where I saw Maddie, she would always go out of her way to come and say hi to me and always put a smile on my face. Maddie's kindness and gentle heart are missed so deeply. Many of us shared this experience of how generous and inviting she was. Maddie was one of the first rabbis I ever met. She was so welcoming, and I knew that if there were people like her there, Wi-Fi was a great place to be. She was always a shoulder to cry on, a friend to laugh with, and most of all, a compassionate friend. Maddie cared for her friends in such a deep and wonderful way. To be a friend the way that Maddie is to be sincere and endlessly loving. The love that many of us receive from her left a feeling behind that can never fade. I will never forget that day. Before I knew, I had spent the morning getting coffee and laughing with my friends. I know that given the chance, Maddie would have been doing the same exact thing. That experience is such a small moment that many of us share, but often do not think about. But that morning, I learned how important those small and seemingly insignificant moments can be. I had no idea how drastically different the next hours, days, and weeks of our lives were going to be. I came home and almost immediately knew that something was wrong.
All right, listening to a tribute to Maddie Mogan. Madison Mogan, one of the 4 victims. We need to squeeze a break in here. Think Tank's going to be here all hour, and when we come back, we'll continue to honor the victims of this tragic case. Go back to Idaho. Stay with us.
hard all my life. I've gone from being a local reporter to becoming a law student to then even going on to teach other lawyers, all before I came to Court TV. As a journalist, lawyer, and teacher, I learned the secret to success is speaking in your authentic voice. And I bring that lesson to my show, Opening Statements, every morning on Court TV.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Hello, everyone. My name is Madison Whitney, and I am the chapter president of Alpha Phi. With me is my sorority sister, Molly Gray. Tonight, I am speaking on behalf of my chapter to share memories and stories about our dear sister, Kaylee Gonzalez. When I first met Kaylee, I was an incoming freshman who just ran home on bid day. I got to know Kaylee through her position as Big Little Chair. Getting a bigger little sister is one of the most exciting parts of Greek life. Today, I'm going to read a letter by somebody who couldn't be here today, Kaylee's little sister in Alpha Phi, Jaden Anderson. Today, we are gathered a year after an event that shook many of our lives. No words could make this day any less hard. Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan still live on in stories and memories shared, and they will always be guiding those who love them. This is why it is so important that I tell you who Kaylee was and still is to me, and that you understand the tremendous absence of her presence as well as Ethan's, Xana's, and Maddie's. Kaylee Gonzalez had a contagious laugh. I mean, you could hear it in the other room. It was so unapologetically her. I miss this laugh every day. She laughed often, at herself and with others. Kaylee was beautiful inside and out. When we lived in Alpha Phi together, she could often be found getting ready, sitting on the floor with her makeup sprawled and her face so close to the damn mirror. She loved getting ready to go and hang out with her people. It didn't matter what we were going to do. All that mattered was the people she was going to do it with. She always put others first and always prioritized her friends and her family. Kaylee was special. A memory I cherish with her is a sleepover we had. I remember us tucked in and laughing at the movie we just put on with no care in the world. This is how I remember her. Giggly, beautiful, kind and funny, so naturally herself. I loved being in her presence, and it is one that I will miss for the rest of my life. Kaylee gave me this book my freshman year called The Sun and Her Flowers. In the book lies a page that states, despite knowing they won't be here for long, they still choose to live their brightest lives. Sunflowers. Kaylee's favorite flower was sunflowers. I think about this quote every day, and it almost feels like her future self was trying to tell me something, or that this was fate bringing this to me now. This book is all about grief, and it just makes me think that I know she's watching out for me, even if she's not here. I asked some of Kaylee's friends to send me some memories about her, and I would love to share them because they are all so true of Kaylee. A member of PC19 says, Kaylee was a one-of-a-kind person. There are not enough kind words in the world to help show someone who didn't know her what kind of a person she was, but anyone who knew her did. The following are more quotes from members of PC19 and people Kaylee was close with. I'm incredibly grateful for Kaylee's spontaneity and desire to always take pictures of everything. I cherish those pictures we took.
The vigil in Moscow, Idaho continues as people gather to remember Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana. The think tank still with us here. Darnell, Crosland, Erica Wilson, and Al Wunsch III. Erica, to you first. The case against Cobra, we were just talking about the DNA and how, and Darnell pointed out how it can transfer. You know, people, you watch these shows and you think, DNA, it's over. But there's more to it. The problem for Kohlberger is that there's more. And it's not just DNA found in the house, it's DNA on the knife sheath with the missing murder weapon, and you have him in a white Elantra. White Elantra was driving around, and his phone records. You could get rid of the DNA-ish, but or get a juror or two to think, I don't know. But when you start to pile and pile, I like Al's idea. This might be an opportunity for Kohlberger, if indeed he is guilty, to say, listen, I'll tell you what was in my head. Just let's save me, save myself.
Yeah, that will never happen. He is such a sociopath. He fancies himself a criminologist. He will never concede. All of this is just a game for him, right? He is enjoying, he's relishing in all the attention that he's getting. So I don't think we'll ever get any concessions or any pleas on this. And I'm not so certain, I wouldn't throw in the towel just yet. I don't know that we have necessarily the smoking gun. Yes, we have the DNA. Yes, we have the car. But these are all things with a good criminal attorney can all be just kind of characterized as circumstantial. If you can tear apart the DNA, then what else do you have? He has a white Elantra. That I see white Elantras up and down the road all the time. So all of these things can legitimately probably explain feeling that way, and then we need.
My close friend, Zana's close friend said, you couldn't describe her because she was everything and more. She was one of a kind. She was entirely herself all the time. A beautiful aura followed her everywhere she went. There was always a smile on her face. She was a very contagious person. Zana was one of those people that you could not possibly be sad around. She made friends feel unapologetic for being themselves. No one ever had anything negative to say about Zana, and that is something that I admire. Nothing could possibly measure how valuable she was. Zana not only was a very unique person, but Zana is a very unique name. I love my name, but I didn't always used to. I used to feel weird and singled out.
All right, we are going to get a break in here. There's much more ahead this hour on closing arguments, including this.
On the docket, a teen pled guilty to killing his Spanish teacher over a bad grade. We have a preview of Jeremy Goodale's sentencing.
I was awakened by my brother screaming.
Pounding on the door, bang, bang, bang.
People don't realize human beings like that can exist in the world.
He said that we'd seen his face and there was no way that he could ever let us go.
They were not going to let me go easily.
You better fight and you better get out of here.
I survived because I'm a born fighter.
I Survived, tonight at 10/9 Central on Court TV.
Nirvana.
Welcome back on the docket tonight. We are previewing the sentencing hearing for Jeremy Goodale. The 18-year-old has already pled guilty to beating and murdering his former high school Spanish teacher. His two-day sentencing hearing is scheduled to begin tomorrow. Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter gets us caught up on the case.
Is it your personal desire to accept this plea agreement and proceed today to plead guilty to the crime of murder in the first degree?
Yes, sir.
In April, 18-year-old Jeremy Goodale, along with his friend, 17-year-old Willard Chaden Miller, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in the beating death of Iowa Spanish teacher Noema Graber. The 66-year-old was taking her daily walk when she was ambushed by the two Fairfield High School students in November of 2021.
She was the kindest, sweetest lady I've ever met. And for something this tragic to have happened to her, this violent, it still doesn't seem real.
Prosecutors say Miller and Goodale murdered Graber because she gave a bad grade to Miller. They were both 16 years old at the time.
I would like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly accept responsibility for the role that I've played in the murder of Noema Graber.
Miller admits to helping plan and carry out the killing, but in court, he denied hitting Graber.
Did you act as a lookout while Jeremy Goodale struck Noema Graber?
Yes.
Did you know that Jeremy intended to kill Mrs. Graber?
Yes.
Did Mrs. Graber die as a result of being struck?
Yes, she did.
However, Goodale says Miller made the plan and they both struck her.
Chaden had brought a bat, among other supplies, to go through with the murder. I was posted as a lookout while Chaden struck her in the back of the head with his bat. After he had struck Noema Graber, we then moved her off of the trail I then struck her, and she died as a result. Afterwards, we removed any evidence that we could.
At Chaden Miller's sentencing in July, family members of the victim spoke out about their loss.
Not only was Noema robbed of 30-some of the best years of her life, her murder deprived Paul Graber of the love of his life and certainly hastened Paul's own premature death.
The judge sentenced Miller to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years, 5 more years than prosecutors asked for. Now Goodell faces the same judge to find out how much time he will serve after pleading guilty to the murder of Noema Graber.
If you persist in this guilty plea, the outcome may be less favorable to you than what the guilty plea or the plea agreement is.
I do, Your Honor.
All right, the sentencing hearing for Jeremy Goodell is set to begin tomorrow, expected to last 2 days. We are, we have our team there, and we'll be watching it together as it proceeds. For now, let's bring back our guest, Darnell Crosland, Erica Wilson, and Al Wunsch III still with us. One might think, why did especially the kid that didn't get the bad grade, not just roll the dice and go to trial and blame it on his partner, Erica?
You know, listen, these are the type of things that effective counseling will do for you when you listen to your attorneys, right? Because there's a lot to be said about taking a plea. Sometimes you have to take a plea, and that literal phrase that we always say, you're throwing yourself at the mercy of the court. Sometimes judges are a little bit more sympathetic if you plea on the first end. They get irritated when you make them go through a trial and you know that you're guilty and you get found guilty. So that whole phrase, I'm going to throw myself at the mercy of the court, can be beneficial when you get to sentencing most times.
Darnell, the allocution there, there's no, this is over, right? I mean, are you surprised by that? That they laid it all out?
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. I think all they had to do was plead guilty. They had an agreement on the table. There's a range, of course, but when you do an allocution such as that, even if later on they change counsel, there's no room for appeal because they've already allocated to that extent. But to your first question as to why, not go to trial if in fact you were less culpable, when you have two people hitched together like that planned it, one of them is going to be the state's queen, or so. Even if I try to pull out, the states can go to the other one and say, okay, now your deal just got better. Just tell us what happened with this guy. So the one that was less culpable might end up getting more time only because the other one turned state's evidence. So when you're tied, you might as well roll together.
Interesting. Al, the prosecution said to the judge, give him 30. Judge comes back with 35.
That worked out very well for the prosecution. I mean, it's a heinous crime. Killing somebody because of a grade, I mean, that's just, it's insane to me that you would get to that point, that you'd be that upset, especially in Spanish. I mean, you know, it's like one thing if it's going to do something for you for the rest of your life, but I don't think that having my Spanish grade be a D or an F is going to destroy me for the rest of my life. But this man, this kid, took it out on this woman and killed her viciously. And 35, you know, he's still going to get out when he's 50 years old, or 55
Possibly,
years old.
because it's up to the parole board.
So he's looking at a parole at 35 years from now. I mean, you know, so he's getting a pretty decent deal. And the allocution being as strong as it was, that's your time too as a defendant to show remorse and to show that, you know, you're deserving of mercy and that you fully understand what you did and you're sorry for what you did. And unfortunately, the kid didn't really respond that well. It didn't look to me like he was actually anyone that I was going to be too sympathetic with.
Yeah, Miller, he seemed to have a bit of a smirk on his face.
Yeah.
And that's probably why he got the extra 5 years.
I would agree with Al. I mean, you know, getting a bad grade in Spanish is not that bad. Al's still working on English as we speak.
The gloves are off. Back in July, Goodell's accomplice and friend Willard Miller was again sentenced to 35. During the hearing, we did get to hear these victim impact statements from the family members affected by the horrible crime. Let's listen to more of that.
The impact of her death on her family is immeasurable. 8 months prior to her murder, Paul received a new kidney. At last, after years of dialysis, things were looking up for the Graber family. Their prayers have been answered, and Noema and Paul were planning trips abroad and time to truly enjoy their golden years. Her death put an end to so much promise for the future.
I've got no hate in my heart for you, and I've met your mother on several occasions, and we had good conversations. She seems like a decent woman, and I'll always treat her with kindness and respect. And I met your grandmother yesterday before the funeral of my father, and we had decent conversations. And I feel sorry for you. And I really feel sorry for your mother, your grandmother, and all your family. They seem like decent people, and I still think that there's potential for you to become a decent person as well. I don't see it at the moment, but I really hope that one day you can be.
So, Erica, if you're representing Goodell, watching what happened to Miller, got the extra 5, had little support, what are you telling your client tonight and tomorrow morning?
Say less words, appear to be sympathetic. You know, apologize profusely, show the remorse that Al said that is needed. You definitely need to do that. Otherwise, you know, the judges have the authority to add as much time as they want, irrespective of what deal that you may have with the state. Because again, he had a deal, Miller had a deal in place, and the judge said he added more time to it. So that possibility is there, and I think he needs to be situationally aware that even though we agreed on this, you could end up with more.
What happens, Darnell? Why would the judge go up with an upward departure? What are the factors in there?
Well, a lot of things people don't realize. The judge has total discretion. So the judge didn't have to take the deal at all. The judge could just shut the deal down and say, no, I'm not accepting it. It's not fair and equitable to me. You're going to go to trial. So in this particular case, the judge looked at it and said, you know what? This is not enough. So I do think if he's going to give this guy 5 years more, the other guy is going to be on par with that. So I would assume if the other side had a lower deal, it's going to go up somewhat to match.
You think so?
Yeah.
Al, do you agree with that? This is the kid now who didn't get the bad grade. He was just also there.
And that's where you're going to come in and you're going to play that up. And that's what your elocution is going to be, saying that, you know what, I'm completely upset that I did this. I can't believe I did this. I ruined my life. I've destroyed my parents. I've done this. I've done that. And it was because of a bond or a friendship that I had with this guy.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was the bad apple. He was the problem. He was the guy that led me down the wrong path. And I followed. And now I realize what I did was wrong. I take responsibility. And I'm sad, and I'm, you know, remorseful.
Eric, that's the key. You can't go all in and say it's all his fault. That's great, saying the bond of friendship got me. You know, without saying it was all his idea. Yeah, that's exactly what it's saying.
Right. You have to take ownership over it. You have to demonstrate your culpability in it. You can provide an explanation as to why you did it, but it's very important that you take ownership over it. You don't want to go in, you know, putting the blame on somebody else, because that's not taking responsibility for it. And you can't truly be remorseful if you don't even acknowledge the depth and the breadth of what your role was in all of this.
You ever have a judge do something totally shocking to you where you're like, where did that come from?
Absolutely, all the time.
All the time.
And so, you know, they ask me, would you roll your dice for a jury or a judge? I'll take the jury any day, because you got several different people to talk to versus one judge. And I've heard judges say things like, I'm in a good mood, so X. So it scares me. So what about when you're in a bad mood? So there's no rhyme or reason. So definitely, they do some shocking things. And just on terms of two friends, you're gonna have to live with this for the rest of your life. One, that somebody died and you're connected. The last thing you want to live with is feeling like you snitched or you rolled over, or you know, you just threw your friend under the bus because you knew what you were doing. So that's not gonna be the way out. So you have to balance how you take responsibility and not have your whole community saying, look at the way you talked about, you know, somebody who you grew up with. So people are always thinking about that.
Right. Al, what are you saying to your client tomorrow?
Be remorseful. I mean, what you're going to do is stand up there and you're going to take responsibility.
But in the same way as the other kid did it, he ends up with 5 extra. At some point, to Darnell's point, can you just go up and plead guilty and say, all right, I plead guilty. I'm not saying anything.
I think a judge wants to hear something, and I think the family wants to hear something. Because one of the things you hear on impact statements all the time is that he didn't say he was sorry. I didn't hear him say.
And usually they don't, because of the possible appeal, right? They dance around with it. I'm sorry that this happened.
Well, but on a plea deal, it's much harder to. There's certain things here when you're dealing with a judge situation. it is much more difficult to get an appeal on these things, okay? Because it's evidence that would get to the jury. That's where you're going to get
There's no mistakes made here because they didn't even go to trial.
You know, in a bench trial, it's very difficult to appeal in the first place. So you're not doing this for the appeal purposes. You're doing this so that you don't get life without the possibility of parole. You're going to do this so that you can get a period of time that at least in 25 years or even 30 years, I can get out. I can't see the judge giving him as much as the other guy. I think he will give him the 25 if he comes across well.
Yeah.
You know what I wish? I wish we could poll the judge like we can poll jurors and ask him, did you give him the 5 years for the smirk? Right? Because inquiry minds really want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it the smirk or was it something? Was it a bad day? Let's get a break in here. Here's what's coming up next.
In tonight's Tank Tanks, a man jumps through the drive-through window of a Taco Bell. He's trying to rob the place. Should he be running for the border?
There was pounding on the door. Bang, bang, bang.
He said that we'd seen his face and there was no way that he could ever let us go.
I survived because I'm a born fighter.
I Survived. Next on Court TV.
A bad grade leads to a brutal murder.
Teenager Jeremy Goodale pleads guilty to killing his Spanish teacher.
The Bad Grade Murder Sentencing. Live coverage Tuesday morning, 10/9 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Closing Arguments. Time now for tonight's Tank Tanks, where we take stories that fly a little bit off the beaten path of crime and justice and get our experts to weigh in on them. Al Wunsch, Daryl, Darnell, Crosland, and Erica Wilson are still with us, and here we go. First story of the night. A D.C. firefighter has been fired after he and his partner allegedly stopped at a Chick-fil-A during an emergency call, which is what we're calling this one the Chick-delay. The pair, supposedly they were heading to a 911 call. A woman says she had chest pains. They had ordered Chick-fil-A on the app, and they argued, hey, it was almost ready. We just literally just stopped. It took a couple minutes. So the question is, can you really blame them?
Absolutely
we don't know.
Not.
We assume that the woman is fine.
Absolutely not. And I've never been to any Chick-fil-A where you're not in and out in less than 5 minutes. So I think they rolled the dice and their odds were pretty good on that. And have you had a Chick-fil-A sandwich?
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. If you ask me, okay, because it's firemen, ask me. All right.
I get it. I see what you did there.
Thank you. A real fireman would not eat chicken. Real fireman eats a flame-broiled burger. Simple as that.
The truth of the matter is that they got the call. It was too much for them, so they chickened out.
No, wait now. All right, second story. The night title. This is called the meat grinder. So police are looking for a guy that has broke into a Memphis, or a couple, actually Memphis Taco Bells are getting hit. One person, though, did use a metal grinder to break the safe. And the authorities say this is the third Taco Bell robbery this month in the Memphis area. They say each one of them has one thing in common. The suspects are crawling through the drive-through window to get inside the restaurant. So the question we are posing tonight, should they be running for the border or running to the next Taco Bell and try it again?
See, this is where they should have gone to rob the Chick-fil-A, because I've always passed by a Taco Bell. Nobody's ever there. So what are you really getting? I'm sorry, no.
I don't know about that. To our Taco Bell supporters, ladies and gentlemen. No, see, I think that the new motto is going to be, yo quiero mucho dinero at Taco Bell. Run to the border.
So how much time is he getting again?
Late night Taco Bell is some of the finest cuisine on this planet.
It's up there with murder burgers, you know? You gotta have it.
That must be a northern thing. I don't know.
I was wondering I wanted to ask Al how was the taco? How did it taste? Because you know that was him at that window.
At that window? No. I walk in. I want to have
see Al
personal effect.
Window.
I want to be in there, and I want to talk to the people. I don't go to the drive-thru for anything, okay? All right? Simple as that. I want my gordita to be right there in my hand, like that. There's my gordita.
All right, our last one of the night, we've named this one the Meth Cup. A Texas man gets pulled over. He remains calm and collected after being pulled over and having his vehicle searched. He confidently confirmed that there were no drugs in his car, and all he wanted from the officers was his drink and his burrito. Not sure if it was Taco Bell, and so he sat out on the curb while the officers searched the car, and he sat there. And at the end, they couldn't find anything in the car, but there was something suspicious about the guy. So they came over and they said, "Hey, what do you got in the drink?" And it turns out he had 5 grams of meth hidden inside the cup. So what we're wondering is, what's the best burrito to pair with meth?
Listen, so far, these stories are not favorable to Taco Bell.
I don't know why we're picking on,
Well, thanks to you, they're not, okay.
Meth, a little carne asada, or that's pollo,
Yeah,
right?
well, he didn't lie. He said there was no meth in his car. There was no meth in his car. The meth was in his cup.
And another term for meth is ice, so I had ice in my drink.
There you go.
Oh, wow, ice in the drink. I like that. Darnell.
I'm still looking at Al, because the truth of the matter is there's no methodology to what Al says at all.
What?
You're going to be heading to the methadone clinic after this one.
The question is, what kind of burrito pairs with it?
I would probably say the beef burrito, because he's going to have a lot of beef after he gets arrested.
The beef burrito. Well, that was original.
Bean and cheese. Erica?
What? Well, you...
Clearly, I'm not a Taco Bell aficionado like these two gentlemen here.
No,
so
you want to shut the place down.
So
You're
I'm
like
just
Mr.
gonna go with
Chick-fil-A
your typical chicken burrito. That's all I got for you. I don't do Taco Bell. I'm sorry. Does that make me?
Yes, you're out of touch.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go by Taco Bell when I leave here tonight, and I'm gonna walk in. I'm not gonna go through the window.
Okay, see, that's the way to go. Go in and say hi to them and say, "What do you recommend?"
And since we're in Atlanta and we're in the South, we need some sweet tea before we leave here.
With a little bit of meth?
A little bit of meth.
Nice, baby.
Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it. Thank you, and thanks to Vinny letting me sit in here tonight. I know he was heartbroken to not see this combo in person on the couch. Well, before we go tonight, there is a picture that we want to show you. This is 17-year-old Ariana Boyd.